And we are on. What's up, everybody? You're listening to the Balanced Meal podcast series, and tonight is another segment of We Were in a Cult, where, as you know, I'm talking to former members of the ICOC, the International Churches of Christ, and we're just sharing our stories, sharing how we were met into it, if we got out of it, our positive, negatives, the whole thing, just to try to get a little bit of understanding of what we were in. And tonight's guest is Phil. What's up, Phil?
How's it going, Roy?
It's good, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
I know it's funny to I don't know, this brings people out of the woodwork, you know?
Yeah,
I can't remember. I think it's been, like we said, it's been almost 20 years probably since
yeah,
I've seen you. Yeah.
for sure. I mean, at the least, it's been 18 years,
Yeah.
or actually, probably 19 years at the very least.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, we go all the way back to West Georgia days. It was West.
yeah, dude. Yeah, went to school there so I could still have the Hope scholarship.
Yep.
Had to be in state, and then but still wanted to be able to be away from the the folks there. When I had to be able to be off on my own
Hmm.
in the dorms or what have you.
Yeah, the Hope Scholarship is the wonderful scholarship in Georgia that if you had a 3.0 grade point average, that your school was paid for as long as you stayed in Georgia
And kept your GPA above
at three.
3.0
You
in
had to keep.
college as well.
Mhm. Yep, all those, and it came from all the lottery money.
All
And
lottery money, yeah.
yep, I had the Hope Scholarship for my first year. Lost it in my first year. How long did you keep your Hope Scholarship?
Oh man, probably the first year.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds great on paper, but it's
Uh-huh.
just they're like this snickering to themselves,
Oh,
like I don't know.
God. Yeah, my parents are so bummed when I lost that.
Oh man,
My brother kept his for 4 years, though.
that's excellent.
Jerk.
Yeah,
Anyway.
yeah,
So, so it was at, so you are not a Kingdom kid. You were met
yeah. I was met
as
at West Georgia,
yeah,
yeah, as a pretty much pagan. I mean, like in the eyes of the church, anyways. I had grown up going to various non-denominational and
mhm.
Methodist churches, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but it wasn't like I was going to church every week, or whatever.
So did you have a view of God, thought of God, cared much about it before?
Um, I mean, I think I cared about it enough to where when I started doing the Bible study series, it was like,
Hmm.
you know, I cared enough about it to where like if I felt like what they were saying was true, then
Hmm.
like I need to make some changes or I need to grab onto this life raft that they're offering me,
Hmm.
that sort of thing.
And so you were just, so someone just like shared with you, invited you out to church?
Yeah, a guy named Walter.
Hmm.
Uh, uh he was out in front of the cafeteria, I think, and was
Hmm.
just like, "Hey, I'm going to do a Bible study over whatever dormitory later on." And I was thinking like, well, I hadn't been to church in a while. Maybe this would be like kind of like clocking in,
Yeah.
hit hitting the old punch card,
Yep.
and so I was like, "Yeah, I'll be there." And he's like, "No, you won't." And I guess he was having a bad day. Whenever I think back on it, he was probably getting a lot of no's, or maybe he had been doing it a while, and people would say they were going to go and they wouldn't. And
And he said, "No, you won't."
yeah, he said, "No, you won't." And then like I
Oh.
felt that was a challenge, and I was like, well, man, maybe I need to really try to be there because prove this guy wrong.
And boy, did you.
And boy, did I.
So so you go to the Bible study and then you
Well, yeah,
started
it was like a Bible talk.
yeah.
It was just like they design those things to be like very friendly to
Hmm.
out the outgoing, the public,
Hmm.
and they make them quick too, like 15 minutes,
Yeah.
if you're good at what you're doing. if you're if you're ambitious and doing a 30-minute or a 45-minute, or you're which happens.
They're gonna be like, you're gonna lose them. You're gonna lose
You're
them.
gonna lose them.
Losing
And
them,
then
guys.
people do lose them. And but it's funny that some people do that. But and they're like, if you want to do a Bible study after this, because and I was like, yeah, that wasn't really that wasn't really feeding me like I thought, you know. And so then they hit me with discipleship right out the gate,
Uh-huh.
which was a changed practice after a while. They eventually changed it to the word study being
Hmm.
the first, because the discipleship study hits you so hard if people are doing it right.
Yeah. And that's one of those that's it's so mind like some people just I tell people about like the studies and how we used to do things like that. And I mean that was just it's wild to people to hear. You're walking out of the cafeteria, somebody like you just go to this Bible study, and then before you know it, you're sitting around. It's like even a deeper Bible study,
Uh-huh.
you know?
Yeah.
So were you like sold pretty quick, or was it just kind of like I don't know, like
Like, can you cuss on this podcast, or
yeah,
you're
you
trying
can
to
cuss
keep it?
people cuss on this podcast.
Um, well, essentially, at first, I told them to fuck off. I was like,
Oh, you did?
right after the discipleship study, they got to the point where they're like, a disciple equals Christian equals being saved, and like, are you a disciple? And I'm like, no. Like, are you a Christian? I'm like, yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
Are you saying? They're like, I'm not gonna. I'm like, I'm not gonna say it. I'm not gonna say it. Because I felt like I was like somehow like disavowing God or something.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of my take. And I was like, and I was kind of boxed into this study room.
Hmm.
They had these study rooms in some of the dormitories that had like four chairs. And so I was against the wall, and then the door was in front of me, and there's like two people sitting there like that. And like I felt like I just couldn't even leave. And I just wanted to leave, like especially by the end. And then but kept the notes and shit, and they put their phone numbers on the top and whatever. And uh so then I was like, I don't know. I think I was like starting to do bad in chemistry. And one of the guys, um he wasn't leading the Bible study,
Hmm.
but he was in there, he was in the group. His name is Justin, and he uh he was a chemistry major. And I was like, dude, maybe you can help me pass chemistry, because I am not doing good right now. And he's sure he tutored me in chemistry. And I think eventually I invited myself out to church, um, because I thought this was a good dude, because he was
Hmm.
like tutoring me in chemistry and stuff, and free of charge, And I think I ended up getting, I think I had a D in chemistry. I think I got it up to a C by the end. So, so
I
which,
mean,
you
C's
know,
way better than a D.
C's way better than a D. Yeah. And so, um, but then after that, I was hitting the Bible studies pretty hard after that, after I'd started going to church.
Yeah, that was a big tactic. That whole idea of being a disciple was like that's what meant you were saved. Being a Christian wasn't enough.
Yeah, yeah.
Like a
Like,
disciple, they would say like you're walking the path with Jesus, like a what is it? I always think of like kickboxer and Jean-Claude Van Damme and that
uh,
his sensei or whatever.
uh
Like that's what it was supposed to be. And so like
yeah,
couldn't
well,
be a Christian.
because it was like, I think anybody in the Christian faith knows like weak sauce Christians,
Yeah. Hmm.
who they talk a good game, but their life is shit, as
Hmm.
far as like how they treat people, or how they treat themselves. I mean, how they live their life, whatever. And so I think part of it was, oh, this makes sense
Hmm.
in a way because yeah, there's a certain standard, I guess, in the Bible itself. And so if you're not meeting that standard, then like, you shouldn't really be able to call yourself a Christian. But I don't know, like I had my brother-in-law text me the other day, and he was concerned about my salvation. And I'm like, don't you believe in once saved, always saved, man? And because I promise you, I was full on saved at some point. because because I was way more of a Christian than you are right now. And
Do you know what I
so
was doing back then? Do you know
you
how
know,
much I was doing?
you know what I was doing? Like, like, yeah, hey, if you believe in once saved, obviously, if that's one of your tenets, that either needs to be a doctrine you no longer believe in, or you need to say, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Like, if you no longer believe in it, that's a different point. I have to come up with a different argument for you, but man, yeah. So yeah, going through the studies again, and yeah, some of them they're a bit intense, but and then it was weird is the heebie-jeebie vibes that other people would get in your life.
What do you mean?
Um, like so you're studying the Bible,
Yeah. Hmm.
and you tell somebody, "Hey, I'm studying the Bible," with this church
Yeah.
over here, you know, and instead of them going, "Oh, that's great," they get concerned, you know,
Yeah.
you know,
Like
and
why
then
why be concerned? It sounds like a pretty cool thing. Yeah, I've been studying the Bible. Oh,
yeah, they
okay.
get you go, "Whoa, wait, what's going on?" And then my folks got really concerned, mostly because my granddad was traditional Church of Christ,
Uh-huh.
and so that they had a little flavor of what this church was about. Mostly the everyone else is going to hell but them, um, belief, and so that they were really concerned about that, and they had me talk to my old preacher and stuff, and then
Wow.
I ended up, and then I talked with him, and I was talking about believe, repent, and be baptized. And I'm like, do you believe that? And he's like, yeah, I believe that. And then because he comes from a non-denominational church that believes in
Hmm.
the believe, repent, be baptized. And then uh, I was like, well, I didn't do the repenting part, you know.
Hmm.
So I want to get baptized again. That's why I want to get baptized again. And he's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. We'll put your folks back on the phone. And he told them that, if he was my son, I'd be really proud.
Wow.
And yeah. And then so then when I went to church and the day I was about to get baptized, I told them the story, and they called off my baptism.
Who'd you tell the story to?
It was
Oh,
like
you told the people in the church that you
church,
had
yeah.
called.
That the preacher had called, and then I think I thought that I called him a Christian
Hmm.
because he believed and believed, repent, be baptized. And I'm like, and he was helping me out, and my parents felt all good. My parents were in church that day to see me get baptized, and
And they
then
called off
they
your baptism.
called off the baptism because my convictions weren't where they needed to be. I needed to know that there's no other Christians except the ones in this church.
Whoa.
And
And that would give me the heebie-jeebies.
yeah, yeah.
So like then what I don't remember that at all. I
Um,
remember I don't remember that's rough, man. I mean,
yeah.
did it feel weird? Did it like how did it
Um, I was like, dude, I wanted to do anything I could. Like, do you know
uh,
I need to sit over here and do a Bible study? Is
yeah.
that going to make things better? Like what do I need to do? My folks are here to see me get baptized. And after that, my folks, they were not interested at all. Like they might have gotten into the church like or at some point that like if everything had gone smoothly,
Hmm.
like they would have been more. It would have been easier for them to convert,
Yeah. Hmm.
you know. And I think at that point they realized, you know, what the church was about, which is control really, and um,
So what did it take for them to finally baptize you?
the head minister Jonathan sitting
Hmm.
down with me. I think that I think it might have been after church that day, or it
Really?
was something soon. It was something like that, and he was upset.
That they called off the
He
baptism?
called it off. Jonathan was like, "This is stupid." This is he like this other guy's salvation has nothing to do with this guy's salvation, and yeah, he was upset. He was like, "This guy could have been baptized." I could have had more stats or something. I don't I don't know what his thoughts were, but I
Well,
was trying to meet his quota at the end of the month. I don't know, but
I think I mean there probably was some truth to being like that. This come on, really? That's
yes,
why we
for
called
sure.
this off?
For sure, for
This is
sure. I felt like he was a voice of reason, and he was a wild guy. I liked him, um,
he was a wild guy. Hmm. That
and
campus minister we had, he grew up in South Georgia, man.
oh man, yeah, I liked him.
Mhm.
He was a fireball.
So
But
so you didn't get baptized that day?
no, I think I got baptized the next, I don't know, Sunday or Wednesday or something like that,
Mm.
and and, the, and then I had a spiritual twin that day, so that was always an interesting thing. Someone gets baptized on the same day as you, and you're supposed to have some kind of connection, you know.
Was it a
That's not,
female?
yeah, for sure.
Oh,
It's a, uh, but that was, yeah, that was like I think my first crush, in the kingdom too. So that
I
was
hope they didn't say something like she was your twin flame, because that's
no,
say
no,
that nowadays.
yeah.
Yeah.
So no, that wasn't there. No one encouraged that at all. You got to be a Christian for a while before you start any kind of
Oh,
relations.
okay.
You got to
Yep.
have a foundation in Jesus, and
Oh, yeah.
yeah. I mean the dating
So
culture was rough.
it
Was
was. So did you we can get to that. I just want to so you get baptized and it was like it was great. Was there like a
um
part that you were just like this is the place to be. This is awesome.
yeah, I mean I think I really drank the Kool-Aid in pretty hard.
Yeah.
Um and I was someone who would just I don't know. If my beliefs gets into something, like I can really feel strongly about something.
Yeah.
So I felt like what I was a part of was the truth, and that we were really doing God's will, and it was I really had trouble converting people though. I was not good at that. Some people were really good at that, and they excelled in the ministry, and um, the ministry as a job was something that was like held in high regard.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, typically, typically got the good looking girlfriends and stuff. It was you know seemed like a good deal.
Yeah.
Like you know, and then yeah, that was so I was out West Georgia for I don't know the next year, I think, because I think I didn't convert my first year, and then I think it was the next spring, and so then I think I was in West Georgia another year after that, and then since I lost this hope, I moved back home and started going to Georgia State,
Uh-huh.
and then
You
that
were
was
because I don't know if we mentioned this yet. I mean, West Georgia was like almost 2 hours from Atlanta.
yeah,
In
it was
our
a commute.
So you were driving 2 hours. And we've talked before, I've talked before on this about how much time was involved with church.
Oh yeah,
So, I mean, that's 2 hours one way, 3, 4 times a week.
yeah. I mean, let's just see. Like I'm into logistics now, so
Mm-hmm.
let's like University of West Georgia.
Yep.
All right, going to Colony Square.
Yeah, Colony Square was that hotel conference center down in the middle of downtown Atlanta.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going I-20 and you're going from West Georgia, it's around an hour and 10 minutes. So the 2 hours you're probably thinking about is the round
Oh,
trip.
okay. That's still an hour and 10 minutes. That's
Yeah.
without traffic, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. If there's any traffic going that way, yeah, it's not great.
Man.
Um, yeah, 50 about 55 miles one way. So you're putting a good bit of mileage on your car
Yep. Mm-hmm.
every week, you know.
So you're drinking the Kool-Aid, you're going to, and then you're at Georgia State. It was like, what were some of the things that like as you were in it, like that were positives, things that you liked
Um,
about it?
well, yeah, like I liked the conferences and stuff. You
Mm-hmm.
know, those are big hype fests, and um, I liked it. I liked it before that letter came out.
Mm-hmm.
It was that was probably the golden time because
Golden years.
there's no
Yeah.
disillusionment before that. It
Mm-hmm.
everything was just like heaven on earth kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing, and besides your relationships with your family, you know,
Mm-hmm.
besides the strained relationships. But yeah, I mean, and then like we'd have speakers come from like other parts of the world and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember this one guy named I think his name was Flavio, and he was telling his story about I think it was like Colombia or something. He was talking about the Colombian flag. It was like uh blue, going across the sea, like journeying and stuff like that. And then like red was, the blood that was spilled, and yellow for gold, the money that it took.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about, he hopes that he like wrapped it up in this sermon at the end. There was like saying that he wished, that he, go as far as he can to preach the word and give all that he's got, symbolic for blood sacrifice, and that he didn't have any money in his pocket. They had given all of it away and that sort of thing. And to me, that was I romanticized that point,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which really hurt my finances for a really long time.
Just like
Uh,
giving it all to the church and like,
well, just yeah, and just spending it um irresponsibly, you know. But yeah, I mean, you're spending money and you're giving money to the church, and uh, and a lot of times you don't even have a job,
mm-hmm.
you're just a college
Yeah.
student, and so it's like you're tithing the money that you've got from like student loans or scholarships or money that your parents have given you, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like uh which is strange when you
Yeah.
think about it, like you're supposed to tithe like income that you're producing, and if you're not producing anything, it's like, dude, what are you're not supposed to be tithing. I would, but that wasn't that was one of the counting the costs
Mm-hmm.
study. Jonathan was like, so what how much are you going to be tithing every week? That was one of the questions. I'm like, dude, I
Yeah.
don't that was one of the and that was one of the points I brought up. I'm like, dude, I don't have a job right now. Like, what do you He's like, so you're thinking like $50 or like, and then I don't know, I think we got it to like $200 a month or something like that, or it was I don't know. I was like, I was like,
Wow.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, it was something like that. I was like, man, this is but I had trouble with that. And it was like, and I think they had, like, I think I was part of counting when I went to California, and I didn't realize how much they kept track of who was given what.
Oh
So
yeah.
unless you put cash in the plate,
Mm-hmm.
they're keeping track of how much you gave every week. And I was like, they had the data.
Jeez. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was rough. God, that's got to be tough to feel like, I mean, I don't even have a job, but I got to give something, you know?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
there's definitely some like feeling of like, no, like I would want to give to
yeah, yeah,
things. You know, church is basically by people's giving and service of,
yeah,
you know, their time. But
yeah. Or even just the 10% thing. They're like,
mhm,
yeah, 10% is like an Old Testament thing, but we're in New Testament now. We should be trying to give more than the minimum.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
I'm like, you know, but and then there was the yearly missions. So it's like you're given this weekly tithe in addition to missions contribution, and
Oh, the special. Yep.
and then they factor that into like how much they calculate that into like how much you make per month or whatever annually, and they had some kind of figure. Oh, this is a good amount depending on
Hmm.
your yearly annual income or whatever. And so I'm like, so if you're given whatever percentage you've come up with that you and your discipler have deemed great,
Yeah.
in addition to the missions contribution, you're given a lot between for the when you calculate it for the year round.
Oh
But
yeah. It was supposed to be something like 20% of what you normally give or something like that. You're
something like
just
that, yeah. And you're like, and then they would come up with these outlandish goals
hmm
sometimes of like what they would get for missions, and not all that went to the missions. Like some
hmm
of it stayed in the home church where they collected it, and I was like, man,
So were you conflicted by that, or you're just like, nah, man, because it sounds like it's like you drank the Kool-Aid, like you were like,
some of
I'm
it
just gonna
was.
do it.
I think that some of the money stuff kind of disenchanted me a little bit, especially when I
Uh-huh.
got to California,
So you
um,
moved to California? I
from
didn't know that.
Florida. Yeah, um, I had
And
met.
you were part of the church out there too?
Um, yeah, so like, well, I had met somebody, one of the dudes. I think he'd come to Atlanta, and I had stayed in touch with him. And he was from Texas, and he
Hmm.
was telling me about the church out there was like it was before the letter came out. It was,
Hmm.
it was good. It was good again out there. And I'd been wanting to go into the ministry a long time. And when I was in Atlanta, um, that was in the cards. Like I was denied any kind of leadership training. Um, and then when I got to Orlando, there was a little bit of it, but it wasn't. I mean, I'm commuting and I'm trying to help out, you know,
Hmm.
as much as I can or whatever. Um, and then I went and visited uh, California. They were going to Grand Canyon on a trip, and then they
Hmm.
were like, "Dude, you should come with us to the Grand Canyon. That'd be great." And then so I went and visited, the church out there, and then immediately had a crush on somebody out there. and
Nice.
then um, and I was like, yeah, I guess this is where I need to move. And then the guy that was leading the Orange County Church of Christ, he said he would train me. You know, he was all about it. And
Wow.
so I was really looking forward to it. He's like, if we get you moved here, we'll have you, train in the ministry, and we'll, you know, you'll have a little discipleship group and all this stuff. And so eventually I was leading a small community college out there. Um, Before that I was just kind of assisting, and then but yeah, then it was it was full on leading one of the community colleges, which is it ended up being like 20 college students or something like that. So it wasn't like a huge group, but it was cool. It was like, I got to had opportunities to preach. I got to do communion, got to uh, give several lessons to the guys or um, to the whole group if it was like a. But I never had like a full on Sunday sermon. That was a pretty big church. That was a pretty big deal if you got to speak to everybody on a
Oh yeah.
Sunday.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, I had some great opportunities there. And then, but even then, I stayed there for a few years, and it was like if you if you don't get married soon, it gets weird if you stay in campus too long.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you're like you got to
Hmm.
like head on out to the singles, and then but then there goes your leadership opportunity, right? So like you're working in your leadership and the campus, and then it's like all of a sudden you go into a different domain, which they have their own leadership and their own, people that they feel like are good leaders and that sort of thing. So, um, yeah, and so and then yeah, that did not pan out. I had uh, I had no skills in that regard.
Wow. So you really wanted to be, so what was it about it that made you want to be like a minister, like get into these leadership roles? You just felt.
I just felt like it was my calling. Um,
Mhm.
but that's what I was supposed to do.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't have I had some training, right? But I didn't have someone like leading me through like a life path, you
Yeah.
know.
Mhm.
Are you like, okay, so you're wanting to go into ministry, are you going to get a college degree? What's your college degree going to be in? And that sort of thing. Because if you're going to be leading campus ministries, you want to be a good example. And then it was like yeah, the amount of people I had in my life that were like telling me how to give me some good talks like that was pretty few. And
Mhm.
then I only had one guy talk to me about my finances, as far as like saving money or, whatever, as far as like compound interest and that sort of thing
Mhm.
goes. And so that was so, but the leadership was kind of where I had a wake up moment.
Mhm.
Um, we had some kind of goal to get certain number of Bible studies every for the week or whatever, right? And so I had two guys under me that were like my little Padawans,
Mhm.
and so they're in this whole huge group of dudes in a big circle. And they're going through like how many Bible studies you get in this week, how many Bible studies you get in this week, and then if they get to a number that they don't like, everybody in the circle railed on them.
Oh, geez.
And then and so then they got to me, and I was at the time I was leaving work at like 5:30 or whatever, and then driving to campus to get into Bible studies before nightfall or whatever,
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
until like the campus clears out. And I didn't meet my numbers. I got a full time job, and so that was the moment where I was like, God's not a part of this.
Mhm.
And yeah, and then from there I started to kind of make an exit strategy and develop that. Um, and then had some my Mormon buddies were living up in Utah, and I had visited them for like Thanksgivings and stuff where I couldn't fly home. Um, so I would drive up one of the interstates, and it would go all the way up to Utah. And I had like a Honda hybrid at the time, and so yeah, I'd go visit them multiple times while I was living in California for the holidays, and they were telling me about a job opportunity up there, and coincidentally, the guy I was working for, he was working for the church, or not working for the church. He was a member of the church, and he had let me go.
Uh-huh.
He's like, "Hey, we're trying to give this your job to some one of our family members or something like that."
Oh
Was
man.
what he was saying, and like, I just probably wasn't the reason, but um, and then so I'm like, well, great, I can go after this job up in Utah, and I'll just be a part of the church up there. No, not a big deal. It was a small church. I think I
Yeah.
visited one like once or whatever all when I was up there, and uh, and I was like, I'll be able to just disappear up there. But if I leave here, it's like for one thing, it's expensive in California. Like getting an apartment by yourself is like not possible. There's many people that still live with their parents because it was so expensive. We had an apartment that was like 2 bedrooms, and there was like 4 dudes on the lease, and then people sleeping in the floor.
Oh
Just like
geez.
just yeah, just people just freeloading, and so that was interesting. But I eventually and I baptized my first dude the week before I left.
Oh wow. You finally
Yeah,
got to baptize
I finally
someone.
got to baptize somebody. Yeah, and then coincidentally, it was I had a sister that was that's what they call them, the
Hmm.
females in the church were their sisters, and
Yep.
the men were brothers. Uh, had finally had some kind of interest in me, and then I was like, I just can't do that to her. Her like, if we ended up getting married or whatever, and I like left the church and she's still a member, like how conflicted she would be, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
And then the other thing, I was like, man, she's too nice too. That's a problem I have. Like, why is that a problem? But it was, I don't know. I don't know. Nice is good, But
So just to backtrack, so so you're started at West Georgia, then you're in Atlanta for a while, then
then
you
went
go
to
to Florida,
Orlando, yeah, and then
yeah,
went to California,
California, and you
and
were in the
then
church the whole time. Then now
yeah,
you're leaving
leaving to go to
from
Utah.
California to go to Utah.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
You're chasing something, man.
yeah, something. And then finally, and I tried to make it work in Utah. Believe it or not, like I was like, um, I don't know. There was something there. It was just like, let me just see if I can make this work, and maybe if I marry one of these, women hotties here, maybe I'll be fine. And then like one of these sermons comes out, and he's just like he like grinded against like what I believed was true from that point on. I was like,
Uh-huh.
that's not the truth, and
Mhm.
I just couldn't do it anymore. And then that's when I like finally left.
And did you go back to Georgia?
No, no, no. I lived in Utah, and with my Mormon buddies. I think I went to the Mormon church once or twice or something. I'd been there before, and man, I would have been Mormon if it wasn't for their music. Dude,
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't get you in there,
dude,
you know?
dude. There's a lot of benefits. There's a lot of benefits, but the music, I would have had to listen to that for the rest of my life. I just couldn't do it, man. It's
I'm
like,
sorry. Yeah.
because I will say
So,
this about the ICOC, their music was fire, dude. That was
yeah, we had a choir, we had good music. Oh man, it was
bands
great.
and stuff. Yeah,
I didn't like that when Creed became popular, we started using some Creed songs.
the Creed songs. Oh man,
I could have done without that.
yeah, I probably didn't even notice. I was just like, this is great.
Yeah. So it's like it seems like you were just always trying to make this work. And I mean, I can see where you were saying like if you have a belief in something, you're going to work at it. Because I mean, that's a lot, man, to just drive multiple states
Yeah,
to try it.
yeah. I mean, yeah, because yeah, it was just, you know, I'd often, I'd wondered if, if I had any kind of like dating game where I could,
Mhm.
um, find a woman that I liked at that time and then ended up married. I've gone through that scenario before of would I still be in the church? And I'm
Mhm.
like, I think at some point I'd still be disenchanted, but I would just be in a way worse situation because it's
Mhm.
like now you're trying to explain to someone you're married to that like this isn't this isn't something I want to be a part of anymore. And that's a hard discussion too. And then if you had kids before you had that realization, that's like that's not good either.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of times people go to church to find that's where you know they'll go to
Yeah.
find their significant others.
Well, yeah, I definitely tried. And that was
Hmm.
like uh man, I had some really some of my worst pain has come from that whole experience of
What do you
trying
mean? Just dating in the
the
church?
dating and then not working out.
Just because, like, just specifically because it was in the church, it didn't work out?
Um, sort of,
Hmm.
because it wasn't like you could just date the same chick until you felt like you should be like boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. You know what I
You're
mean?
always having to date someone else.
So I
Yeah.
always having to switch it up, and then so then you're having to like do these games of like sneaking in time or saying hi to him after church, and it's just it was that part was kind of weird.
It was
Um,
weird. It was we were trying to encourage the sisters to make
that
sure they
yeah, that everybody was getting dates.
yep. Hmm.
Which if that policy wasn't in effect, there probably would have been a lot more left out.
Hmm.
Um, so I see some of the wisdom there, but it was a very strange place to find romance,
Hmm.
to say the least. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I I did all I could to get out of it for the most part. Um, I just always had a job on a Saturday, you know. That's just
Okay.
kind of how I did things,
Okay. Like
quote unquote.
you had no intention of like wanting
No,
to.
I hated how they dated. I hated the whole thing. But see, here's where, like, I don't know if you would feel this. It's like there was a guilt to it because you knew you were supposed to be doing it.
Oh yeah.
So like I didn't feel like great about what I was doing. I was just like, oh, it was just so hard because you're just trying to either come up with money, come up with some cool activity all the time. And this might sound shitty to people listening, but I mean, it was just, there was this intensity to the date. It wasn't like you're just going to hang out and like, hey, I think you're cool. Let's
Yeah.
hang out. It was like, no, you've got to like make it awesome every time.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, you had to you had to bring your A game no matter who it was.
Even if it
Yeah.
was just someone you were just trying to check a box. I mean, I definitely, there were a lot of dates. I was just like, I probably need to check a box here so I don't get discipled on this. So
Yeah.
I'll find someone.
There was boxes that I was checking that like I was sending out mixed signals I didn't know until way later.
What do you mean?
Like because there's because eventually you go through a certain rotation, then you might, date someone, go on another date with someone again, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And then so that happens enough, maybe they might be thinking you're interested in them.
So you had a few girls that these are the ones I'm gonna take out. You just
No,
had like
no, no,
I'm sorry.
no, no,
That's
no.
what it sounds like.
That is
It
kind of what it
sounds
sounds
like,
like. But like what I'm
yeah.
saying is that like, because here's the thing is that you might find someone a lot more fun to go on a date with than other people. And so even if it's a filler date, you're gonna want to go out with someone who's more fun.
Yeah.
Right?
Hmm.
and not a lump on the log. And so, yeah, there was some mixed signals I had sent that was because I was just trying to go on a fun date for a filler date.
God, I hate that like you say filler date, but I mean it sounds so bad, but I mean you just had to,
Well,
you know?
the filler dates are the ones you're encouraging. You know,
Yeah.
you're
Mhm.
not you're not romantically interested in, but you're commanded to go on these dates, and so yeah, they are where they are. They're filler dates. Yeah, there's no chance that you're going to be. I don't know, not necessarily no chance, but like pretty low chance.
Well, and it was also a closed system.
Yeah,
There
close. Yeah,
wasn't
it's a
like it
very
wasn't
closed
like
system. Yeah,
we're not going to like the city of Atlanta where there's, thousands and thousands of
yeah. It was a small
opportunities.
pond. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was part of the reason why I went to California. The pond was so much bigger.
Yeah. Hmm.
So, but man,
You
yeah.
remember after church, it would be like I felt like a cattle call. It's like everyone's just trying to find a date for the weekend.
Oh man. What about the last minute dates?
Oh, those were couldn't do that, you know.
You're like, I think you're supposed to ask them like, I think a couple like a week or
Yeah, you had to
maybe
give them
two
enough
weeks
time.
so
You
enough
had to give a
time, enough
week.
notice, and then like if it's the Wednesday before the weekend, it's like
Oh, they're not going to feel encouraged.
they're not going to feel
Nope,
super encouraged about that. And
nope,
then
nope, nope.
and then if it's like you know you're like had their phone number from before or something, and you're like calling them on a Tuesday, a Thursday, or a Friday, like, hey, you want to go out this weekend or something?
Oh yeah, I did a couple of those, and those were just so uncomfortable.
Yeah, because something you might get a cancellation or something. And then your buddies that you're going to be doubling with because you got double dates. Yeah, you
Yeah.
gotta have a double date. It's not Christian unless it's a double date. Um,
Yeah, you always
and-
it I always wanted to I wanted to make sure the double date was fun. Like the dude was going to
oh,
be
yeah,
fun
for sure. That
because
was
it's
that was one thing you had control over. You could go
yeah.
on double dates with the same guy for weeks on end. There's no problem with that. You know.
So, for those of you listening, Phil had his stable of women that he would take out every rotation. So he's like, it's the third Saturday, so I need to take out X girl.
Yeah. Uh,
I'm sorry, Phil. I know that
uh,
wasn't, but yeah, man, you like and like but see, from what I've been hearing and what you feel like, they also were like in the sense of like they couldn't send those mixed signals either, you know.
yeah.
It was
They had their own mixed signals, but that was part of
mhm.
guys trying to figure out this landscape that is so weird. Like I think like I don't know, I remember taking out um a girl from Athens,
Hmm.
you know. That's another whole other pond right there.
Yeah.
And then our first date was New Year's, which is a huge day.
Was a bit, oh gosh, the New Year's date had to be spectacular. It was like prom.
It was like prom every year. It
Yes,
was like
prom
prom.
every year. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, we had the
Valentine's
big
was pretty bad too, but definitely
no
New Year's.
New Year's Eve. You had to pull out all the stops. You would
Yeah.
go to a big New Year's Eve party, all
Yeah,
that stuff.
big old party. Yeah.
Oh man, and if it didn't work out, you were so scared and so frustrated and
Mm,
oh
yeah.
man.
Oh man. So I took out this one girl from Athens. It was our first date, and
Uh-huh.
it was her birthday.
Oh geez, really?
Yeah. And honestly, I don't even think I knew it was her birthday until that night. I was like, I'm like,
You know how to
this
pick it, Phil.
dude.
So
And
was it
then
so it was a good date?
yeah, it was like I had a lot of things like going for me that night. Um I had coordinated it with like Athens dudes and some of my friends, and we went to this nice Italian restaurant downtown,
Uh-huh.
and the guy was like, the owner or whatever, or whoever was seating us was like acting like he knew me and stuff. And it was just like, oh, we got your table downstairs, and it was like this little private like wine room,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it was pretty magical. Like I had like somehow impressed, at the time, um and then the dancing afterwards was fun. It was at that location, or in Sandy Springs. I don't know if you remember that year, but it was like the corner. I don't know what. Anyways, it was like Roswell Road and something, but it was up
Uh-huh.
there.
Wait,
And
yeah, I probably remember what you're talking about.
but it was a pretty nice place to have a New Year's Eve party. Um, but uh, but yeah, and then so I was kind of like head over heels after that. Even though that was our first date, and then so I was like, well, and then I got advice. I was like, hey, should I take her out for Valentine's? Is that what I should do? And then the advice was like, yeah, you should. And then, um, so then I had to double with some other Athens couple. I think they were already dating or whatever. And then,
Uh-huh.
then we were going to Benihana's. Um, and if for whatever reason I didn't have my quiet time, I did that morning, the studying the Bible and reading is what we call the quiet times. And so I was a wreck because I didn't have my spiritual armor on, and and I was having trouble. And it was like before GPS, and so I was having trouble finding the restaurant, and like I was getting frustrated, and then like I remember this. I remember this one instance where I didn't even remember how old I was. She
You
had
didn't
like
remember how old, all because you
yes,
and yep.
dude. I don't know. I was like slowly lost. It's not like you were
Satan was
even.
attacking you because he knew that you were weak because
I
you
was
didn't
so.
have your quiet time that day.
That's true. That's probably what was
Oh,
happening. He like sabotaged it, and then and I think that was the last time we had gone out. After I
uh-huh.
think that was. I think there was, and then she started dating a brand new convert.
Uh-oh.
Like started like he was like he had like water, baptismal water on behind his ears, and they got
Man.
married like quick.
Oh, geez.
And so that was really intense for me. I was like, yeah. And then after that, I was like, I got some, and then I got into the Ponzi scheme, and then lost a got into a good bit of debt. Had to declare bankruptcy, and then
Really?
yeah.
And so the Ponzi scheme, was it a guy in our church?
Yeah, it was the guy in the church was like, "Hey, we should." It was you can Google it. It's called 12 Daily Pro. He got me into that, and yeah, it was like make something like 12% on your money in 12 days or something like that. So you can just keep reinvesting every 12 days.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but the max amount you could put in was $6,000. Um, but so that's
So you put in the maximum amount?
I think I put in a couple thousand. I think it was,
Mm-hmm.
but I'd already been had bad investments. With I was trying to I tried to do a real estate investment company. I think at one point,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it was and yes. So in 12 days, if you had put in $6,000, you could have got $720 back. You know, so that
I
you could just
think
keep doing that over and over again. You're just like racking up money. But it collapsed like right after I had gotten into it, started putting money into
oh,
it.
did the guy end up going to jail or anything?
The person that started it did. Her name
Wow.
was Cheris Johnson or something like that.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, yeah, she went to jail. Yeah, Cheris Johnson. Yeah, she yeah, because she thought she had a good thing going until
Uh-huh.
the SEC got a hold of her. But yeah.
And so this was like soon after the girl or soon
Yeah,
after
well, that
this?
was I think part of that was like some kind of harebrained scheme that like, if it doesn't work out with those two, then like, I'll have a bunch of money
Hmm.
and now they'll somehow win her over. I don't know. That was like my thoughts at the time was like,
Yeah,
yeah,
it was the dating stuff though was so intense and you had that like it's interesting that you bring up the feeling that like you didn't have a quiet time
yeah,
that morning and just
yeah,
the feeling of like I didn't do this thing in the morning, so that's why all of this is happening.
uh-huh.
You know, like that I felt like that kind of thing plagued my like
Oh
any kind
yeah,
of like
dude,
thought
oh
processes, you
yeah.
know?
Yeah, it was an intense belief system to think like that,
But then it would get used against you, right?
for sure.
If your discipler was be like, "Oh, well, did you have your quiet time this morning or did you pray?" Oh,
Yeah,
that's why. And so you're
that's
just like
yeah,
afraid of like not doing the work,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
I mean, it's hard. It was hard for me. Like I remember, like you would have these like just wild thoughts. I would with like if I quote unquote sinned that day, which usually meant something like I watched something I shouldn't have,
Right,
or something with what because we talked about our purity
all the time.
all the time. It's
Yeah,
so terrible, and it's but like if you did anything like that, then whatever bad happened to you that day was because of what you did,
oh
the
yeah,
sin you committed. And there were multiple conversations with my discipler that would be like, "Yep, that's why." And it just developed this like just fucked up sense of like you know,
yeah. Like punishment, and
uh-huh.
also gonna had your view of both God and Satan
Yeah.
were
Mhm.
were intense. Like Satan was this boogeyman
Yeah.
that was always out to get you, but then also like God was also kind of wrathful in his own way, or at least um like like the Job scenario where he allowed Job to go through all
Uh-huh.
the shit that he went through, you know. Um whatever that is, just like being able to stand back and be like, yeah, you can punish him as much as you want, or really in his family, they got the brunt of it.
I
Like
know.
the children, except the wife. The wife stuck around in order to say that he should just kill himself. Like,
God.
yeah, I can't imagine.
But just yeah, it's like so like yeah, God made you forget how old you were on that date.
Yeah, dude, I felt so stupid. I'm like, what? How old am I? Because I mean, I guess I had gotten back to like things were going okay.
Yeah, you found the
And
restaurant, I guess.
yeah, found the restaurant. Yeah, man.
That was tough to like I've taken out girls in Athens and you drive all the way out there and and it was tough.
Yeah,
I ended up dating a girl that went to Athens, that she went to college out there. Hmm. But yeah, I mean, even in just the sense of pressure with dating is always tough, wanting it to go right, wanting it to everything to go perfect.
yeah,
Um, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. The whole situation was just like,
It's
and no one helping you out either. It was
yeah.
like,
Hmm.
it was like, if you just work on your spirituality, you'll be able to date whoever you want, or whatever,
Uh-huh.
And it's like, no, that's not factual, actually.
Such flaw. It's kind of like flawed logic. Oh, all I need to
Well,
do is like
yeah,
have my quiet times, and then I'll get a girlfriend, or I'm
yeah,
gonna have quiet times, and I'm gonna get all the money I want.
yeah,
You know?
sort of. Yeah, like,
Yeah. Hmm.
the money will come in and you'll have whatever life, you want.
So the moral of the story is have your quiet time every morning, Phil. I'm just kidding.
That's the
Sorry.
moral of the story, folks, is if
Yeah.
you have your quiet times every morning, life
Uh-huh.
will put in your lap. Just
Just put it all in your lap. Uh-huh.
yeah.
So so you quit going in Utah. What was it like? What was it like after you left? Like, how was it like making sense of things? Like, what'd you do with
Yeah.
all the time you had now? Because I mean, we had no time in
Yeah.
church.
A lot of video games.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, my buddies were like big into to video games, and so that was probably I don't know what we were playing at the time, but it was probably something stupid like World of Warcraft or
Uh-huh.
I don't think League of Legends wasn't out yet, or at least we weren't into it yet. And then but yeah, it was stuff like that. Just um and then trying to go on dates out there, is with people outside the church. And so you're
Uh-huh.
like trying to figure out that whole, what are the rules,
Oh
and
God, yeah. Hmm.
dude, that was rough. That was really rough.
Oh yeah.
It was like a Wild West, man.
Oh, it was the Wild West. You didn't have to, and you didn't have to do any of these things, but you're like, don't.
Yeah,
It's almost like you didn't know what to do with your hands. Like, what do I? You're just sitting here like, how do I? What do I say? What do I
yeah,
do? I don't. And
yeah,
it was weird for me the first couple of dates
yeah,
after church, those because you just don't do. It's like some of the things. I mean, people like. You're calling and making sure you're keeping them informed of what's going to happen. They kind of know what's going on, but
yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some things that you learned that so you're not a complete novice, you know?
yeah. Hmm.
Um, but at the same time, there's definitely like some some cues that you might be missing or expectations that you might have
Hmm.
because you're told that like any woman outside the church is just a succubus or something
Oh
like that,
yeah, she's gonna. Mhm.
you know, and it's like
Yeah.
that's not necessarily the case, man. Despite whatever
You're
your
not
desires are, that's
you're not gonna go on this single date and then she's gonna,
jump
take
on you.
over. Yeah,
Yeah,
and you're gonna be in an alleyway, doing drugs off each other and having wild insert whatever pornographic thing you need to say. No, that's
right.
that's probably not gonna happen. You're probably just gonna go on a date and it's gonna be fine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or for us, we were protecting the women from our sisters
The
from
dudes
the
are like that. The
yeah.
yeah,
Did you ever
which is
find it did you ever find it weird always calling them your sister?
yeah, that was um kind of a bit strange. Yeah, but I think at some point it just becomes the norm.
Just the lingo.
The
Hmm.
lingo. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
well,
so
yeah, there's like the sister, sharp. That word I can't stand. Bro, you're sharp. That's sharp. That's a sharp person over there.
oh yeah,
Remember
like
that one?
yeah. If you're not sharp, man,
Yeah.
sharp clothes, yeah, sharp
What about
haircut,
what about sold out?
sold out.
Oh, you
Yeah,
gotta be sold out, bro.
you gotta be sold out. Yeah,
Uh,
that's a SOULED,
yeah.
sold,
Sold.
sold out.
Um, but what was it like, sort of like with your, with like whatever? I mean, was it w- like what was God like after you left? Like Christianity, what was that like for you? I mean, was it like was there a lot of anger towards it? Did you just kind of like leave it?
Um, well, I mean, I had kind of like an awakening moment.
Hmm.
Um, and that was kind of really kind of what opened my eyes was just like, like, people have to make whatever decisions they're going to make in their lives, like, like for example, the guy that I baptized before I left, like that was the decision he was wanting to make, or like his life had led him to that point, and had played some kind of part in that, but it was he was a long convert too. It took him a long time to even want to convert. So it wasn't like he was just like knocking the studies out and then getting baptized in a couple weeks or something. Like he had thought this through, and I think he had liked the community, and that sort of thing. There's something to be said about that. A lot of people don't have a sense of community in this day and age,
Yeah.
um, and and so I didn't feel the need to like try to do the burn it down scenario where I try to give them bad press or whatever. I just I felt like people were going to do what they're going to do, and people try to live the best, happiest lives that they can. um and sometimes that's what people need, is some kind of structure like that. And I don't know, definitely some people really benefited from it. Uh but I think, well, there's a large group of people that may have been in there too, that it was definitely not the best for, as far as like their life direction and how their talents could be used, and that sort of thing. um but yeah, I had a lot of soul searching that I had to do while I was in Utah, and um some of that was like, marijuana and whatever, and just figuring life out. And um I used to be really big, really into it. Nowadays I'm not. It treats me
Yeah.
differently these days. I get
Hmm.
very anxious and uncomfortable. But before, we'd had like the Weed Olympics in Utah, and it was like,
The Weed Olympics.
yeah, the Weed Olympics, and we had all these different pipes around the room, and then you just had to go from pipe to pipe, and if you're left standing, you're
You're out?
you're if you're left standing, you're won or whatever,
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
but if you get
Wow.
starfished, on
Hmm.
the ground asleep, then you failed. But yes, I had
I
those.
bet you saw God in some of those Olympics.
you
You
know,
experienced something.
I went to a group meditation at like a local uh crystal selling shop, and
Yeah.
I liked meditation, and I was always wondering what group meditation was like. And dude, it was some of the most profound spiritual experiences I'd ever had. It was like, some of it was like, felt like out of body experiences, like, um and then just even the feeling through the body was very intense. It was like, because I went and just kind of like, hey, this sounds like a fun time, maybe I can gain some
Hmm.
peace or whatever, or tranquility. And it was just it was a lot more powerful than I thought it was going to be. um but and then, I had other experiences, other um shamanic, like Native American style teachings and things like that. I was kind of did a lot of exploring to see what other spiritual systems had to offer, you know.
Hmm.
And I think from there I'd become a lot more grounded as a individual than
Hmm.
I'd been in the church. Um, and I felt like, um, fear and shame and guilt were a lot more present in that church culture than there should have been
Yeah.
if it was a true church of God. Like,
Hmm.
I don't think fear, shame, and guilt should be something that you're just feeling all the time, you know? And it's not even like stuff where you're sinning, you know? You know, I think there's one of the authors I used to read a lot of the books from authors from the church, and one of the guys his book was like Guilty Soul's Guide to Grace or something like that, and I've related a lot to it. Um, and it was pretty helpful. But in the end, it was just like that culture of guilt was still very prominent. Um, and so that's kind of like one of the things where I realized that I think true spirituality helps you get rid of those things, you
Hmm.
know, as far as like, and helps you to experience more of the love and uh, even oneness with others, that we're a part of a grand game, really, that this life is supposed to be meant to be enjoyed. You know, it's supposed to be experienced and supposed to be uh, a place of, yeah. There's some learning, but I think it's more of an experience that we come here for than anything else.
And there's a way bigger conversation going on, to try to will it down into this like one little finite way of thinking,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
and then
Yeah, yeah. I think when you put stuff into a confined box like that, you can miss out on a lot.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah, I think the hardest things for me to let go of are like you're saying, the shame and the guilt, because they
mhm.
did a really good job, making sure that you're an expert in that,
Uh,
essentially.
oh yeah,
You know,
man. Yeah.
I told my therapist one day, I was like, I mean, I could teach everybody a course on guilt and shame. I'll make you
Yeah.
be really good at that.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, dude. Like,
So,
yeah,
so so you said though earlier that there's some people that needed it, and then some people it like wasn't the best for them.
yeah. I mean, it's
Which
probably
do
not the
you,
best for anybody, but
well, like,
but but I think there's some people that may have had some kind of developmental disability,
uh
and they had a culture in a community that was
hmm
very supportive to them, like
hmm
get them to and from church, like provide for whatever kind of needs they might have, that sort of
yeah.
thing, you know.
But where do you think you landed with it? Do you think you needed it then, or do you think it was like, oh man,
Yeah.
I don't know if I should have ever done that.
Yeah, it's dude, that's it's a tough thing that I've had to wrestle with, because it's
Mhm.
like, you think about the benefits of things like, was I taught leadership and stuff? Yeah, I was taught leadership, and was that, uh some discipline, there's like these transitional skills that you learn, um, but like other things you're just left in the dark, you know.
Yeah. Hmm.
Which is so for me, I think like ultimately, I'm not sure if I would have had a better life, especially in my 20s,
Hmm.
if that guy hadn't invited me out to a Bible discussion, because that group wasn't out there very long,
No.
because he and everybody else had eventually transferred out. Um, and so there was just a small group, so the likelihood of me even being met out there was very small.
Hmm.
um and so I think about stuff like that, like, um what would my life would have been like at, and but it's made me who I am today, and I can't separate myself from that, you know. And I like who I am today. I feel like
Hmm.
I'm a lot more um balanced of a man than I would have been otherwise. Um, I feel like I see the world very differently. than a lot of people, and
Yeah.
some of that gives me a lot of peace.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that gives me a lot of mental fortitude. It's I was feeling something earlier, about like, my wife's, pregnant, and I've got this new job, and all this pressure, kind of that self-imposed pressure, but some of it was just like, man, what if I died, and like
Mm-hmm.
leaving this baby without a dad, all this stuff, and you just start thinking stuff like that. It's just like, what would I've done in the church at that time, and while I prayed, just,
Mm-hmm.
you know, God grant me wisdom or that sort of thing, and and I was kind of reflecting on that too. I'm like, what, because there is some kind of power in prayer. They've studied it as far as like brain waves and that sort of thing. As far as, there's a really awesome book called The Power of Eight,
Mm-hmm.
and have you heard about
I've
it?
heard of the book. I haven't read it though, but
It's that lady. She wasn't religious or anything. She was just doing these studies, um, and then they did some miracles, like legit
Mhm.
miracles, with having thousands of people over the internet like focus on a particular thing, and I mean, they did some amazing things. And so some of that is like, is groupthink, like having many people think about the same thing, and or just even having your own mind focusing on, whether it's placebo effect or like harnessing your own energy and stuff like that. Um but initially I was just like, I just need to just chill out, a little bit. So some of it was just like coming home and just like gathering my breath, and then taking a cold shower, gets the heart rate down, some very simple things that I think in the church I could have prayed and not felt any resolution. It's been like, well, God didn't hear my prayer, or it was because I didn't have my quiet time, that he's upset with me, or whatever it is. Um, and so there's a lot of that sort of thing that's, I think, for it just feels like the number of people that just had this awesome relationship with God, where they honestly felt like that, I think was pretty far and few between. It's like, I don't know, what do you think about that? Like,
I
as far
mean,
as the number of people that were just had the peace without any of that guilt and stuff.
I think some people, like you say, need to hear it a certain way.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people need structure when it comes to like faith, spirituality, God. What does it all mean?
yeah,
Um, especially if you're an adult. Because if you're an adult, to just try to sort of like start to figure all this out. This is such a big topic and it can be it's a hard thing to tackle.
yeah,
And so for a lot of people want it easy. People want it easy. They want to get a simple solution. Like if you do A and B, you're going to get C. Like
yeah,
they're like, oh, okay. And then that could make sense for everything in the world. And if things come up that are weird, it gives them sort of this, oh, well, they're not doing B. Yeah, that makes sense. Or I need to do A, or I need to do this. And
mm,
it just simplifies everything. And there's a piece from that. Um, but I also think some people just ignore the guilt and shame.
mm,
They'll think it's either it might be a trick. You'll hear this with people like it's Satan trying to trick you,
mm,
or they'll double down, and then that leads to them double downing on whatever it is that they're taught. And but it is also like you think about like the sense of a community. People want to feel like they belong to something, and if
mm,
they belong to it, whatever it is, it gives them a sense of like they're not alone.
yeah,
So like I never really I can't fault people that are in it. I can't fault people that have been a part of it
yeah,
because because really, it's just it most of it comes from people just trying to feel a part of something, do the best that they can with what they got. I think the problem for me comes from when people know that people do that and then they start manipulating over it, and then they start throwing the shame and guilt and they start using those people because of that. I think that's where it gets really, it just angers me a lot because
Well,
that's where you know it's the sick people. It's just hard. It's hard to forgive people for that, and I think that's where
yeah,
my anger still comes, is from some of the leadership and using our hearts and our like souls for for some kind of stat or a purpose or to keep us in line, you know?
yeah. Well, I mean, the sad thing is that like sociopaths and narcissists
Mm.
can exist in a system like that undetected.
Oh yeah, 100%. They're celebrated for it,
Yeah,
essentially.
yeah,
Like you said a little bit ago. I mean, they would be getting people in the and baptizing people, and then they're in the leadership roles, and then they're getting the pretty girlfriend, and then it starts to be nice, and then you start to think, well, I need to be like that person.
yeah. I need to be like them. Like they
Mhm.
seemed like they have it all, and
And it
yeah,
and what's and it's just it's like I was thinking about this when you were talking earlier about you like the meditation and the other things that you do, like the cold showers, the breath work stuff. It's like you have all of these tools to help, where like we were given one tool, you know, do
yeah,
this one thing. This is the answer.
yeah,
And, you know, if you only have a hammer, you know,
yeah. You're just
it's
gonna just hammer everything. Yeah.
it's going to be great until you need to screw something in, and it's not going to work,
Hmm.
you know. And there's some people that I think, and for me, like I only had what I was taught, Same thing with you. I mean, we could only use what we were taught, and then it's really hard when what we're trying to do isn't working,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know. I mean, I don't know. Did you feel stuff like that?
Yeah. I mean, um, I remember, I remember, I remember when I remember when I was living in Orlando and I'd gotten my heart broken yet again. Like
Oh,
I was really interested into this other chick, and she's this guy came back to church. He had left,
uh-huh.
and he comes back. He's like, I want to be a Christian again, and then the girl I was interested in started dating him, and then they both left the church.
Oh, geez.
And then so I was just like, so I was trying to be spiritual and all this stuff, and I just remember crying out in prayer that night, that I find all of that stuff out. I was just like, how many more times do I got to get my heart broken, until I find, the one I'm supposed to be with, how long is this?
Yeah.
How long is this going to take? Like I don't know if I've got that much more of my heart left, and it was just it was still many, many more heartbreaks before that. But um, but I just yeah, but it was very confusing to me. I'm like, but at the same time, there's free will. It's not like
Mhm.
God can like force someone to like you or whatever. Which essentially is what you're praying for.
Yeah.
You're praying that someone likes you or whatever. It's like you know you're essentially like casting spells, and that's essentially what you're doing too when you're praying for someone to become a Christian. Like you're wanting them to like come to this life decision, and your prayer somehow manipulates them or puts obstacles in their way so they can see the light. Like I remember praying for my sister, and she had a rough week one week. It was like she had fallen out of the treehouse that we grew up in, and she's a grown woman. She's up in the tree and fell through the floor and hit her head like on this fence that was around the tree house, and she is like getting this uh going, had the ambulance come check her out, and then she had like choked on some lettuce. The same ambulance guys came out, and then like,
Oh, geez.
and then and I think she got shingles or something that week too, and it was like, and to me, I'm like, wow, this prayer is really working. Maybe this is going to help her to become a Christian, and it's like, you know, and you just kind of left wondering, like, if you're if your prayers are doing something like that, is like, if that's true, then like that's not good. That's
Yeah, it
not.
gives you this weird feeling like, I mean, is this really something I need? Do I really need to be doing this?
Honestly, it was probably purely coincidental. From a Christian's point of view, you're thinking like, wow, God's really trying to show her, to
Oh, yeah.
she needs to come to the light or whatever. And yeah, it's just wild. It's like you live in this magical world, um, and not that we don't live in a magical world, but it's it's
Yeah.
we live in a very different kind of world than the rest of society does, and the church celebrates that. That's the
Yeah. I was thinking about when you were talking about praying for like how many more times was my heart going to get broken. And I think for me, I would get this sense of like, what am I doing wrong, God?
yeah.
You
What
know,
am I doing wrong here?
but not so much because like it's normal for people to feel what you're feeling, right? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
your heart's getting broken, but it had to do with like salvation, and like how you were viewed to God that added to this, that just made it feel so much heavier, right? Like, no, it's of
Mm,
course I'm not, if I'm not getting this girlfriend, it's because I'm not doing well spiritually, and God knows I'm not ready for it yet.
mm,
I would
yeah.
think that
Oh, for
sometimes,
sure. For sure.
and you're just like, it just is so.
I mean, even to get her, even if she likes you and you like her,
Uh-huh.
there's still this conversation between like the disciplers above
Yeah,
you and
because
her, and they have to make sure are they both ready for this relationship, and just has
because ultimately the love isn't really what you're after. You're trying to get to heaven and help this girl get to heaven. If you guys can like have a decent relationship and love
yeah,
each other, I mean, that's just
bonus, yeah,
extra. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
bonus.
yeah. If you're single the rest of your life but you get to heaven, then you should be happy with that, you
Yeah,
know.
uh-huh. I mean, yeah. So, well, it sounds like it's just funny to like talk about this stuff and to like, it's nice because you share this with some people and they just don't, they're like, what?
Yeah,
They don't get it. But well, I think it sounds like you're in a pretty positive place.
yeah. I mean, that's one of the things they also tell you, is that you leave the church, your life's gonna just turn to shit, and
Hmm.
you're gonna be a drug addict, or I don't know. I mean, they just like paint a huge nasty picture of what life
Yeah.
is like, and it's like it's not like that, like that has more to do with you know where are you mentally grounded, and I think therapy's great too.
Hmm.
Man, I would, I've had some of my own therapy, but I wouldn't mind like, talking some of this stuff through with a psychologist and stuff. And it's like,
It's
yeah,
it's saved it's saved me from so many things.
yeah,
I probably mention this in every episode, even if it's not about this, about the power of therapy
yeah,
to talk. I mean, I've been in it for 10 years.
yeah,
And it's funny, I'll share this because it kind of talks what we're talking about with New Year's Eve. Like I realized I had a really big problem when I was going on a date with my now wife, and it was New Year's Eve, and things weren't going like how I wanted them to go. And I was having like a low key, like, it wasn't like a panic attack, but I was literally like losing my shit in the
yeah,
car. And my wife, she was like, what is wrong?
yeah,
And I like couldn't figure it out. And then I had this like epiphany and I was like, oh my
yeah,
God, like this is from
yeah,
church. And she was like, what? And I got to talk to her and she was just like, oh my God, like this, what?
Did you have a quiet
It's
time that morning?
and I didn't have a quiet son. That's why.
That's why, dude.
But I was telling her how like I had it was just this pressure for everything to go right because if it
Yeah,
didn't, and she was like, "What? I'm not, it's not like she was gonna leave or
yeah,
like anything like that." But that's when I realized, okay, like I need to be talking about this with people.
yeah,
So because I mean it in a sense we were programmed. I mean in a way, you
yeah,
know. Mhm.
for sure. And it's like, yeah, I mean, you can't really fault yourself. I mean, I think one of the phrases that has helped me, like, we made the best decisions we could with the information we had at the time.
Totally.
You
Beautiful
know,
statement.
and you can't fault our younger selves for that. You know, and it's like, all we can do is try to live the best lives we have now, and it's like, I don't know, like I was talking to somebody and they were talking about their parent, and their parent was having trouble with coming to grips with death, because they're, whatever age, and they don't believe in heaven or anything, and I was like, man, that's tough, but it's like, maybe let that belief allow you to make the best of every day,
Hmm.
because if this is all you got, this is all you got. And but sometimes people don't think that way, and
Hmm.
it's a shame, and but it is crazy that, like, your spiritual beliefs and outlooks, it can shape your whole reality,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know and but yeah, I'm glad you got out to hear the story about what was your wake up moment at some point. I mean, I'm
Fine.
sure you shared it already on the podcast, but
No, it was long.
it was
It
long.
wasn't one thing. There wasn't this one like epiphany.
Okay.
It was little bits here and there, because I did some of the things that, you mentioned like, you get to it, you get in your campus ministry, right?
Yeah.
And it's you start to get older. And for me, I mean, it took me 13 years to graduate college. So like at one point I could have been like 28 around a bunch of like 19, 20-year olds, and it's just weird.
Yeah.
But you didn't want to go to the singles because like, you think about these groups and like that sort of like you're in the singles ministry. It just felt like you
Well, it was like you're the
failed.
rejects
Yeah.
of the campus ministry,
Yeah.
people
Mhm.
that couldn't find love in campus. And so you're the leftovers. And
Yeah, I think it started to change a little bit with like people were like young professionals and at one point, but I circumvented some of it and went and I became a teen, like served in the teen
oh,
ministry.
yeah, I remember that. No, I remember that. That was a very good circumvention there.
Yeah. And so I did that and then but it was just little bits of like, I don't know. I mean, this was all I knew. So I just kind of like found ways to stay in it, but not in it until I just couldn't take it anymore.
Hmm.
And I knew I needed to break free. So there were
Hmm.
just little decisions over the course of like 7 or 8 years.
Okay.
So
What was your last year?
my last year was with my parents' church. I stayed there and just kind of like it was a very free church to be a part of because I never felt like I had to like there wasn't the pressure
Hmm.
with this church. This group of people specifically like didn't like how things had gone and they wanted it to be a little bit different.
Hmm.
But that last couple years, I mean, I had my heart broken, like my relationship failed. I was dating a girl and the heartbreak sort of helped. It's weird how like heartbreaks and like hard things like that kind of open you up to like really question things.
Hmm.
And so I just realized I had all this baggage, all this hurt, all these questions, and I needed a break. I needed to be out in the world to see if this is it.
Yeah.
What is, and they were like, what is it? I don't even know what it is, but it's just too hard to be in here. Even in the safety that I felt, I was like, I gotta take a walk. And so that was 13 years ago.
Did you have anybody like try to get you to come back?
No, not really. I luckily I had people in my life that I had friends that I could talk to this, and they never, it never really felt like I had to be a part of the church to be friends. They kind of like got where I was at. And then my parents were kind of like understood that. I mean, I think my dad and mom in this always understood that like it's my faith and my walk and my journey. And so they couldn't like force it on me, especially if I'm like in my late 20s, you know? So they were always a safe landing place for me.
Hmm.
Um, but once you start questioning things and once you start seeing, like for me, I just started reading books by like, I was like Rob Bell, Richard Rohr, Eckhart Tolle,
Yeah, Eckhart
Ram
Tolle. I mean,
Dass. Yeah, I've read,
Montas too, man.
yeah, I have Grist for the Mill. That's a good
Yeah.
book. Paths to God is a good one.
Uh,
And I just started exploring just things, and then you just start to see that there's a big thing out there. And like your faith can be whatever it is, and it can be as big or as small as you want it to be, but it's usually just up to you, you know? And I don't know, we could talk hours and hours and hours upon views of church and what they're doing, but I just felt like you said it before, I was only given a hammer, and we need way more tools than that for this life. And I know the one thing I don't want to do is to sit here and say that I have all the answers and that you need to listen to everything I'm saying, because that's a very toxic way of looking at life, you know?
yeah, yeah, and it only takes a certain number of years before you figure out that you don't have all the answers.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
it's
And I,
I wouldn't think it's very long, but some of some
Mhm.
of the ministers in the church were pretty old and they still felt like that. So I don't know.
I mean, it goes back to comfort and simple and easy, I think. And, you just get used to it. I mean, there were plenty of times. I mean, I could have just stayed, you could have made it work, like you were saying, and it would
Yeah,
have been,
I didn't know if I could have made it work, um, and still not been in some kind of pain
yeah. Hmm.
for staying. You know, like knowing that there's a lot of bullshit
Hmm.
and that I'm just like tolerating it in order to stay. I don't know if I could have. I don't. Yeah, I don't think I could have just tolerated it for the sake of
Hmm.
tolerating it, being a part of the community, or you know that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, good on you for recognizing that when you did,
Yeah,
less collateral damage.
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's one thing you got
So,
to think about too. Is like the lives you affect.
uh, so what do you think? We were in a cult?
I prefer to call it a high demand religious group.
You found that, because tell me how you found that, because I think that's great.
I was
Tell
getting
how.
I was I'm a big fan of AI and stuff like that, and so I was talking with ChatGPT about it, and I was and the first question was like, "Hey, are you familiar with this church?" And it was like, "Yes, blah blah blah." I think there is even they named leadership, but and then I was like, "Well, I was a member for 10 years, and looking back, it's painful, and I feel like those 10 years were stolen from me. It's hard for me to reconcile the loss of those years." And it sent back like 4 paragraphs of like, sorry to hear that, and
Wow.
yeah, and you know, stuff like it's important to remember that your experience is just one part of your life story. While it may have been difficult and painful to experience, it's also an opportunity for growth and reflection. And you may be able to take what you've learned from your time in the movement and use it to shape a new sense of purpose and direction for yourself moving forward. And so, and then that was when it was like um, talking about finding support groups for other people who have left high demand religious groups. And I was like, that kind of helped me to call it that because I just, you know, you know, we're kind of we're more hardcore than Mormonism as far as our
Oh, gee. Really?
or as far as what we're called the lifestyle we're called to live.
Yeah.
But we were cult light and some of these other compared to some of these other groups and
Mhm.
like Scientology or I don't know about Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't know enough about them, um, but there's a lot of groups that could have been worse,
Mhm.
and so yeah, we were part of a group that was just really hardcore, but I think we got off pretty good. I mean, we could have been molested. There's like a lot
Yeah.
of things that other groups do to people, and it's just like we didn't have to deal with that at least.
Well, probably some of us didn't. I mean, it's more than likely happened, but yeah, I mean, I
It's
see
pretty
what
yeah,
you
true. Yeah, I would imagine it would have been pretty uh the percentage wise very nominal as far as like compared to say Catholicism or something like that.
yeah.
But
No, yeah, I see what you're saying.
but you know, uh isolated. It was more
Yeah.
isolated, I would say.
Mhm.
But it does seem like that's a common occurrence in some of these groups.
And that's pretty wild. What I mean, you were reading what you were reading from ChatGPT. I was like, wow, that's pretty powerful stuff right there. It's only one part of your
Yeah.
life. Chance
Yeah.
to grow.
Yeah, I mean, some of it, how it works, is it tries to predict the most favorable outcome as far as like what it sends back to you.
Mhm.
But some of the earliest AIs would repeat back your question, or repeat back what you said in a question.
Huh.
Like, hey, I'm struggling with my relationship with my mother, and
Mhm.
it says, "Well, why do you think you're struggling with your relationship with your mother?" And then they just go into that. They're like, "Well, because of this, blah blah blah." Well, why do you think that is? And then it
Jeez.
keeps going back and forth, and that's all it's programmed to do. And then that was what the programmer was wanting it to do. And these people were having these in-depth conversations, and all the computer was doing was just rephrasing their statement of the question. And so this is a lot more sophisticated, obviously, but I've had times where I'm like, is there some consciousness in here? But then like, yeah, it's hard to say. Like, but I do think that's in the near future. Like you'll be able to talk with AI and will not be able to distinguish whether you're chatting with another human on the other end
Man.
of a computer versus just another program.
And is that just another cult on its way?
It could be,
Yeah.
eventually it's a possibility. Like I think there's one cult centered around a lobster because
Hmm.
lobsters could live forever if someone helps molt them, take their shells off. And
What?
so yeah, so they want to have a lobster get really huge and that be their god. And so they have a lobster religion where they're going to have like this giant lobster that they continue to take the shell off of so it can continue to grow. And
Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny to think that that's crazy, but we're the only way isn't crazy?
that's not crazy. Everybody else is going to hell but us.
Yeah. You know?
And you know, and then walking around campus and looking at everybody like, man, everybody here is going to hell.
Yeah.
Like, and the
Uh-huh.
pressure that puts on you. is
That's not crazy, but
that's not crazy.
helping a lobster live forever is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. To be like their church mascot, essentially.
I'm gonna look
Yeah.
it up and put it in the show notes.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, Phil, thank you for sharing your story. From everything you went through, being vulnerable enough to let me put it out to people. I
Yeah,
think
man.
it's a good story. I'm glad to where you've landed, you know. And so yeah, I think we all learn from our stories. Everybody has stories that helps us feel less alone. So you were a part of that. That's a cool thing, man. So yeah, thank you guys for listening. And if you were a member of the ICOC, or you're still a member, or you're part of the ICC or one of the other ones that Kip started, and you want to share your story, you can reach out to me through the Balanced Mail Instagram, which is just the Balanced Mail podcast, or you can email me at balancedmailpcast@gmail.com. So yeah, thanks for coming on, Phil.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and until next time, guys, we will see you soon. And